So yeah, it was really sad that nobody came uh, to help when you know I was screaming for help. Not screaming for help, but I was screaming because I was hurting. I was in a lot of pain, and I was honestly very surprised that nobody came to knock on the door, or they didn't even call the police or nothing like that. But I mean, it was like whatever. Now he's just like, I don't know. It's just amazing how people are very like, I don't even know what the right word would be, but yeah. I want to go back to my past. When I was growing up in Guatemala, there's a few things that happened that um kind of I still remember. I remember being groomed to over there by um uncles and cousins. I remember I used to always like to hang out with my cousins because they were like closer. They were either a little bit older, just about close to my age. So I like to, I had somebody and people to play with and stuff like that. So one time I asked my grandmother if she would allow me to go stay the night at one of my aunties and uncles' house because I was just having too much fun with my cousins. But it was the worst decision of my life. I thankfully was not. I don't even know how you would call it, but I mean, I like nobody. Um, so the person that did this to me was my uncle, and I just remember waking up the next day, and I remember my cousins left the room, and I was the last one in the room, and my uncle came in and he started to kiss me, and I just remember his tongue being in my mouth, and it was like the most disgusting feeling ever in the world. And just to put it to perspective on how small and young I was, is like I felt his whole mouth around this whole area of my face. Um, so I'm 4'9", so I'm already a really short uh, person, and my just not just being like small in height, but I was still like a little, very young kid, and it was just really disgusting. And then that was like the last time I remember ever going over there. Um, it was just like disgusting. The worst feeling in the world. I felt violated basically. And then another time I remember too as a kid was a couple of my cousins. These were male cousins, and I remember being in their room. Um, and I remember they were trying to pin me down to the bed and trying to get on top of me. And I just remember fighting them off, and like I was literally kicking really hard, as hard as I could. And I remember I was able to kick them off, and I like ran out of the room. But I remember being really scared, and and just a very stressful situation, and it's just being really scared, and like I don't understand how these things happen. Like I just remember going over there, with the family and going to hang out and stuff, and like it just ended up that happening. Like it was just crazy. Think that things like that were happening to me before even I was even like um sexually assaulted by my father. Um So that was that. So when I was growing up too, I remember the first testimony how I was talking about. I saw a creature. It was probably a demonic spirit, maybe a familiar spirit. Who knows? Um, in the corner of the room. So after I saw that thing in the corner of that room, I remember that uh, I that's when I first started noticing that I was like somewhat attracted to girls, which was weird because I was a really young kid. But anyways, I don't know how that happened, but um, I remember when I was going to school, I had attraction. I had an attraction for girls, and I remember one core memory I in school was I went under the table and there was another girl under the table, and I just remember kissing the girl, and she kissed me back and stuff like that. We were like doing that under the table. It's just weird memories. There was a neighbor too that was a girl. I remember I went to her house and we were hanging out. I remember kissing her too, and she kissed me back. Like we were like making out and stuff, which is weird to think because we were pretty young kids. I mean, I don't know how a child would even know to do that. Like it just seems weird to me that I even knew how to do that. Um, and then later on, when I was a little bit more older, these are all like different stages of me growing up over there. Um, and I remember liking this boy, and I remember asking my cousin to go talk to him for me, which is being retarded, like pretty stupid. But um, yeah, I just remember like being like, "Hey, go talk to him for me," blah blah. Like pretty dumb, honestly. And I remember I was pursuing him, and then I remember one day we had this room in my grandparents' house that was in the back, closer to the bathrooms, and in this room we put music on, like we had a radio back there, we put music on. And I remember this boy finally said he finally said yes. He said yeah, that he liked me too or whatever. I remember that his name was David. I remember he gave me this Winnie the Pooh stuffed animal, which was so cute. It's just like a little Pooh bear. um I remember having a crush on him. And then I just remember that one night, uh, he had a sister, and this girl, she came over too. I think it was just her. I don't remember him being there, but she came over, and we had music in the back. We were all dancing and stuff, and we just started making out. And like I just remember feeling like this, like really strong attraction to kissing a girl. And it's just weird. It's just weird to me. Like I don't understand why. I think about it sometimes, and it doesn't make sense how that even came to be. But I'm guessing that maybe I don't know. Maybe I was being influenced by something unseen, and yeah, it's just weird. So I remember knowing at a very young age that I had an attraction to girls the same sex. And as I grew up, it just became more and more, like I acknowledge it more. I knew it was there. So there would be days where I would feel like a boy, and some days I would feel like a girl. And it it like So yeah, there would be days where I would feel like a boy, and then there would be days that I would feel like a girl. There would be days where I wanted to wear baggy clothes and made myself look like a boy, and then there would be days I'd like to wear a skirt and feel like a girl and stuff like that. So there was definitely, I feel like there was definitely something um, that was influencing me, and by that I mean something spiritual, like demonic, because if you're a girl, you can't be a boy, and if you're a boy, you cannot be a girl. It's just, that's just not possible, you know. We're definitely made uh, different. There's purposes to who we are and who God says we are, and how God made us. And for you to feel different than what you are is definitely not of God and completely demonic. So like, I was influenced by this spirit of homosexuality, for from a really young age up until I don't know, like, I can't say that I started identifying with being bisexual, and because I was attracted to boys and girls, and um, when Barack Obama became president and he made same-sex marriage um, legal, I was actually one of the people that rejoiced about um, that abomination, and I was, happy. I was like, yeah, like love is love, like I was very, very ignorant and stupid. Um, I obviously had no idea. I wasn't in my right mind, obviously. Um, but I was one of those people that rejoiced. I was one of those people that, celebrated Pride Month, and um, um, yeah, like, I can't say that coming out of that was easy. Um, it was a struggle for sure, and I had to ask the Lord to help me get me out, because I could not do it on my own. I asked the Lord to help me start feeling sexually attracted to other women, and um, it was hard at first. At first, it was hard to um, to come out of that, but the Lord always helps you and gives you the strength, because He's the only one that can help. But yeah, I remember, I don't remember ever being in a relationship like that with a woman, but I just remember having sexual encounters with other women, and um, yeah, being attracted to women, since I was a little girl to the point where I was an adult too. Um, so I just asked the Lord. I was like, Lord, please help me. I know that this isn't right, and like for some reason, I had always felt that this is why I never got into a relationship with a woman. I always thought that women were too crazy for me, and it felt wrong too. It felt like it wasn't right, but I couldn't help myself, if that makes sense. There was always that, like desire for um, women like that, but I just prayed to the Lord to help me come out of it, because at that point, even though I was already with my husband. We weren't married yet, but I still had an attraction for women, and it just felt so wrong. And I just asked the Lord to please help me because it wasn't right, like I was still, I just barely, I got saved 2019, and I didn't start to live right, com- like fully, until I had my first daughter, which was in 2023. So like it hasn't been that long, and like, but the Lord has helped me, get over this, and I can firmly say now that I'm not a homosexual anymore. I'm not attracted to women. There's days where uh, temptation comes, and I just ask the Lord to please take that feeling away and help me uh, make my path straight. Like to direct my steps, Lord. And but yeah, I used to identify as a bisexual woman. I did have an attraction towards women, and I used to dress like a man at times. I even cut my hair short like a man. But yeah, like, I'm just thankful that the Lord took me out of that, because it is an abomination. Even if people don't want to see it for what it is an abomination. The Lord says, for, for women not to live with women like they would with a man. So, um, and vice versa. So he took me out of homosexuality. Um, so when I was in high school, I met this boy, right? In ninth grade, he asked me out. I said yes, so we started going out. It was like maybe a few weeks into being a freshman in high school that my dad went to jail. So I was having such a horrible time, closer there to the end of my dad going to jail, because like I said, my brother was on his way to the United States, and I remember when he finally got to us, and he was living with us. I remember my dad was just completely obsessed with me. He was crazy, and anything and everything. He like would control everything that I would do. So he would tell me, don't talk to anybody in school. Come home right after school. Don't hang out with anybody. Don't talk to anybody. And I just remember I actually would listen to him up until the point where I was just fed up with it. But he like told me not to talk to nobody. And I remember, because he was so obsessed with me, he was crazy like that. He told me to not look at my brother, not talk to him, not even say hi or nothing. Like, completely just like if there was a wall right there, right? And I remember that being really hard for me, because I grew up with my brother in Guatemala, and he was like my best friend. Like, we would always hang out, we would play in the dirt. He would have like toy cars, and we would play together. We would play soccer with our cousins. We were friends. We used to hang out all the time. We would talk all the time. Like, so for my dad to tell me that I couldn't talk to my own brother was just like, it was just horrible. Like, I couldn't, like, it was just like, at the end right there, it was just like he was just unspiraling. He was going insane at this point, because I remember one time I looked at my brother and I smiled at him, and I was just like, normal stuff, like something that's completely normal. So yeah, I smiled at him, and I remember it was like during breakfast, because I since um, they needed help with working and stuff. So my brother came over and helped, and I would always stay back with the kids and clean the house, cook, and I made breakfast that day. And I remember I was just kind of bringing food over to the table, and I smiled at him, and I guess my dad seen that, and he like waited. He like got pissed off. He got so mad. I remember he was like yelling at me, and um, eventually at some point, him just yelling at everybody and just like being hella crazy. And I remember he told me and my brother, if you're gonna be looking at each other and smiling and talking and whatever, you might as well go into the bathroom and go have sex, he said. And he was trying to get us to go into the room so we can go have sex together, which was disgusting for him to even just say that, and to know that he was even thinking that I wanted to have sex with my brother. Like, that's insane. Like, that's disgusting. You're crazy. You're like insane. Like it was just going. Like my dad was just going insane. Like, literally, he's going insane. And I was just so fed up with it. I was just so tired, and I was so like, I was just so, I was just so over it. I was just like, dude, I am so over it. Like, my dad was just going crazy, and I just remember feeling so like, I was just so fed up. I can't even describe the feeling of disgust, and just like being so over something, like I just remember talking to one of my girlfriends in school. So one of my friends in school, I was like, dude, so, because I remember in, um, yeah, when we first started high school, I remember I had a few friends, and I remember this person particularly I was getting very close to. Um, one of the reasons was, like I used to think that she was cute, and like I feel like I had a crush on her. But I remember just telling her what was happening at home, and how I was so depressed, and I was just so like, I was so done with life, and it was just, life was just getting more harder and harder, because my dad was just going more crazier and crazier. And I just remember telling her that one day, and I remember the next day she came over to me, and she told me that her mom wanted to talk to me, and she was like, hey, my mom wants you to come over to the house. She wants to talk to you. And I was just like, okay. I was like, all right. So right after school, me and her went to her house, and she brought me to her house. And I remember her mom sat me down and was just like looking very serious, and she like sat me down next to her, and she was like, what your daddy's doing is wrong, and you shouldn't be allowing this to happen. Like, you need to get help. You need to call the police and get you help. And I just remember when I remember when she mentioned the police, and when she said that I needed to tell somebody, I just remember feeling very, very scared. Like, I was afraid of my dad, and I even told her, I was like, no, please don't do this right now. My dad's gonna kill me. He's probably looking for me right now because I didn't come home. Like, I was so afraid that my dad was gonna find me and literally kill me. And like, she was like, she talked to me. She was trying to like convince me for like a whole half an hour. I don't know how long it took, but she was trying to convince me that whole time to call the police, and I just couldn't brought myself to because I was just so afraid. But she was like, if you want, I'll call the police for you, and then you can talk to them. And I just remember like just fidgeting with my hands and being like, okay. And she called the police, and then she told them what was going on, and then she passed me the phone over to me. And I remember the policeman just asking me questions, and then they told me that they were gonna pick me up from her house, and I was like, okay. And dude, I just remember my heart pounding and being so afraid and just being so scared. Like I just didn't know what was gonna happen. Like I was afraid that the police wasn't going to believe me, and that they were gonna send me back home, and that my dad was gonna kill me. You know, I was just so afraid of my dad. And so the police picked me up. I remember they asked me if I was hungry, and but I think that was at the end of the interview, because I remember so I went into the police station. They took me into a room, and a guy came in. It was a detective, and he came in and he asked me a lot of questions, and he asked me to tell him what happened. So I started with when my dad started touching me on top of my clothes, and then it progressed to him touching me under my clothes in my private parts, and then it progressed to me giving him oral, to him um, um, uh, taking my virginity. Basically, I don't even know how do you say that. He pretty much inserting himself inside me, and then he also sodomized me, um, and I told him pretty much everything that my dad did, and how he treated me and everybody else at home. And I told him about the incident at the laundromat where he slapped me because he saw me sitting next to a boy waiting for the bus. Um, and so after all this was discussed, and I told him everything that happened, he told me that we needed to call him. So I needed to get a confession out of him. And I was just dying inside. I was so scared, because I was like, what if I mess up? What if I end up tipping him off that I'm at the police station, and I'm just trying to get him to confess. But I was just like, okay, like I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna just try my best. And I remember the detective telling me that he was gonna make it seem. So they had a phone in the station, in this in the room that I was being interviewed, and they told me that they were gonna use this phone to make it seem like I was calling my dad from my cell phone, because I had a cell phone back then. There was, remember the flip phones with the keys and everything. I had one of those, and so the detective told me that they were gonna make it seem like I was calling him from my phone, and just to, and then he told me to tell him that I talked to a therapist in school, and I told her what was going on at home, I remember my mom answered the phone at first. I called the house phone, and then I was like, she was all freaking out because they were like looking for me. So school was out at about like 2:30, something like that, around there. And it was already 5 or 6 at the time that I called my mom and my dad. And then I told them that I was at a friend's house, that to not worry, like I told my mom, don't worry mom, I'm at a friend's house. I'm gonna be there here soon. And I remember asking her to pass over the phone to my dad, and I wanted to talk to him. And I told my dad that I saw a therapist in school, and I told her what was happening. And um, I I I told him that she told me that what he was doing wasn't okay, and I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I just remember my dad saying, I told you not to tell anyone because it was just gonna create problems, and it was gonna mess things up, he said. And I remember saying I'm sorry, and um, that's when the detective was like, gave me a thumbs up, saying that he got the confession. And and I told my dad, I was like, hey, I'm at a friend's house, don't worry, I'm gonna come home soon. I'm literally just around the corner. I just wanted to come hang out, and I hope you're not mad at me. And my dad was like, no, don't worry, I'm not mad, just come home. Because they were freaking out because they couldn't find me, so he was just like, whatever, just come home, dude. But I remember I hanged up, and then I remember him saying that to not worry, that things were gonna be fine, that he was gonna be arrested. And he asked me if I was hungry, and I said yeah, and he got me McDonald's. I remember that he got me a burger, fries, and a drink. And I just remember just kind of eating like a bird, just having this horrible pit in my stomach. My mouth was bitter, or like stuff like that. And I remember being asked if I wanted to go back home, and I was like, no, I don't want to go back home. So they put me into foster care. I went into a group home at first, but before I was even taken there, I was taken to the hospital because the detective asked me when was the last time my dad had assaulted me, and I told him when. And so they took me to the hospital and did a rape kit on me, and they found my dad's semen inside of me. And that's how they were able to you know clarify, I guess, or I don't know what the word is, but confirm. That's how they were able to confirm too that I was being molested by my dad, because they were able to find his semen inside of me. So that was another part of the evidence, I guess you would say. So after they took me to the hospital, they put me in a foster home, and I just remember finally sensing peace, but at the same time, not really, because I was separated from my family, so I was completely alone again. Um, And at this time, I was 15 years old. Um, and I remember when I first went into that first foster home, they gave me my own room. I remember that the officers picked up my clothes and everything that was basically mine. They picked it up. That being like clothes, socks, shoes, stuff like that. You know, the essentials. Um, they brought it to me, and I just remember sitting at the window of the room that was given to me, and I can't say that I remember crying. I don't know, honestly. Like it's kind of a blur. Um, uh, but yeah, like I remember I was gone for a whole week from school, and mind you, I was still dating this dude. Um, so he was freaking out because he hadn't seen me for a whole week. And I remember when I first finally went back to school, they were all like, "Oh my God, what happened to you? Well, you were like gone for like so long," and like people were asking me what was happening, and like, I was just like, I don't remember what I said, but I just remember like feeling the straw and just like knowing that it was over was a great relief, but it was also like challenging and somewhat scary because I was on my own. Yes, there was people, adults watching over me, but I didn't have my parents again. Basically, I didn't have my family again, and I felt completely alone. And yeah, I was still dating this guy, and I remember this boy. Um, First few things that he wanted from me was to have sex with me, and I remember one of the first things that he wanted to do with me was um, um, it's kind of like weird to say, but he wanted to do anal, and I was like, whatever, like to me, I guess that's how I learned that that's how you show love, like um, the way that I perceived love to be was to give up my body, basically. And I was like, whatever, yeah, sure, whatever. So that relationship started off not right already. Um, and yeah, this relationship that I was in with this boy that I met in freshman year high school went on for 9 years. It went on for a whole 9 years, and this relationship was also abusive. It was unhealthy. It was toxic and always possible. And I remember for the first 4 years of this relationship, I remember just it was hard because I hanged on to this boy for dear life because I didn't have anything else. And I thought that he actually loved me, and but the more and more we grew up together and the more the years went by, I realized that the relationship was just horrible, and abusive. So, so, um, yeah, eventually, um, my dad was put in jail. I remember, I can't remember when, but I just know that, I don't know how I came to know this. I honestly can't remember how I came to know this. But I was told that the police went and knocked on my parents' door, and my dad thought it was me because I told him I was going home and I was gonna be there shortly after I hung up the phone when I called him that day. And he was met with the police officers, and he was put into handcuffs, and he was taken into the police station and interviewed. He was questioned about everything, and then they told him that they had evidence against him. They had a confession, and they had, um, the semen that was found in me. And so he was put into custody, and I remember, um, I don't know. So when I was 15, I wasn't. I was supposed to stay away. I don't remember if I was supposed. Yeah, I think so. So as I was allowed to have visitation to see my mom, and I remember, um, see, I like everything blurs because I just can't remember very well. Like it kind of blurs. Some parts kind of blur out. Like I can't remember correctly, but I remember eventually. I don't know how long. I think it was 2 years after He was taken into custody. That they set a date for a court hearing, and I had to go testify against him, which was hard. Not that it was hard because, you know, well, it was hard because I didn't want to see him again, and being in the same room was just, the thought of it was just extremely scary to me. And I remember, it was just really hard. It was really hard time. My high school friend was actually dragged into it too because, I was the one. She was the one I confessed to begin with, and she was the one that um, offered to help and call the police. So she was dragged into going to court too, and her mom. And I remember when I went to testify against him, I remember the way that he looked at me. I could see that in his eyes that he wanted to kill me. Like you could see the hatred in his eyes towards me. And a few times it was hard to me for me to like talk, and I just remember telling my dad, how could you do this to me? You're supposed to protect me from someone else that would do this to me. And I didn't say it very calmly. I was like almost like screaming, like with my heart breaking at the same time. Like it was just really hard for me to it like it was just unreal. Like how could he do that to me? Like he was my dad. He was supposed to protect me from somebody like that. that would do something like that to me, but instead it was him that did it to me. And it was just like, I just remember calling him out too, and just being like, why, see the way that you're looking at me, like you look like you want to kill me, like there's so much hatred in your eyes, like yeah, it was just a really hard thing to do. Like I thought that once I was out of the house and taken out, I thought that was gonna be it. And like I was never gonna see him again. And come to find out, I had to like testify against him in court, and just seeing him face to face was just like like heart wrenching. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have to do that. Like I was already somewhat relieved that I was out of that situation already. And like I didn't want to see him again. It was just like, I don't want to do this again. Like I don't want to even like, no. Like it was just, I didn't want nothing to do with him anymore. Like I was done. Um, but yeah, I had to go testify against him and all that. And I remember one of the things that my dad was saying to contradict my word was, the only reason I was even saying that was because I had a boyfriend and I didn't want him to know, and I wanted to have this dude to be my boyfriend, and that's why he was basically saying that I was rebelling against him and that I was making it up because I wanted to have a boyfriend, basically. And of course nobody believed him because there was evidence against him already. They had evidence against him. They had a confession from him, and they had bodily fluids that showed that he was sexually assaulting me. And at the end of it all, he was found guilty and given 48 years. And of course, after a long time, like I've come to, because I've come to know Jesus, and I've asked the Lord to help me forgive him, and it took a long time to be able to forgive him. I hated him for a long time, and I wished death upon him and all that kind of stuff. And eventually the Lord helped me. He softened my heart and helped me forgive him for what he did to me, to the point where I even thought, like, what happened to my dad? Like, did something happen to him when he was young? Because most of the time, people that molest adults that molest children, usually they went through molestation themselves. So I don't know what happened to my dad when he was growing up. Like, I don't know. Like, I've heard stories. I've heard that my grandpa was a drunk, and like, I don't really know what happened. I can't really say that my grandpa did anything to my dad, because I don't know. Like, I don't really know anything. I don't know anything about my dad. I don't know anything about his parents, or my parents, grandparents, and stuff like that. Like, I don't know anything about my family history or anything like that. So I don't know what happened. Like, but like, pray over my dad. I pray that he would come to repent. And I remember asking my mom a few times, if she knows, like, because if she talks to him still, and she says that she's talked to him a few times, and I ask her if he has changed, and she tells me no. Like, he sounds crazy still. Like, he's still telling the story that, he's innocent. So I exceeded 60 minutes on TikTok of recording, so I can't record anymore. So I'm gonna be continuing my testimony. Stay tuned. Thank you for listening, and remember to like and follow, like and subscribe.